Okay, hi Stephen. How are you?
Morning, Douglas. I'm very good. Very happy to be on your show today.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. You're an author of 21 leadership books, yeah?
Yes, well, leadership, personal development, and professional development altogether. Not all 21 are on leadership, but the last, I think, five have been.
Okay, how long did it take you to write 21 books?
Well, the first book came out in 1996, 97, sorry, 97. So about 23 years, 21 books, so about one a year.
One a year. Okay, is that fairly doable? I mean, you're not rushed to do one book a year?
No, I'm not rushed. I pretty much have a format to outline it and then write it. I write it longhand. Then I edit as I type it in, and then I do a couple more edits. Sometimes I send it out to a professional editor. But no, if you focus on it, you can get a book done in 8 to 9, 10 months.
Is it possible to just do your own editing without getting somebody else to proofread it, or is it generally preferred that you get a second opinion?
I think it's generally preferred. I admit I do my own, but again, I've been writing professionally for almost 40 years now. My first job out of university was as a copywriter at a high technology company. I've edited other people's books. I help publish other people's books. So I've got my own editing process down. But look, I admit I make mistakes, and sometimes again I do have somebody just take a quick glance at it, and there's usually 4 or 5 little typos in there that need to be picked up.
Yeah, I tend to, I haven't written that much. I write screenplays. I've written a couple of screenplays. And aside, they have computer programs now that'll format it properly for a screenplay.
Right.
But it's always the grammar and the typos that and I'll read it 10 times and I won't catch it.
Now, and grammar is one of those things. Also, it depends on your style. I mean, for instance, some people like the Oxford comma, which means if you have two or more things in a or three or more things in a sentence, you put the comma after every word. Others don't like; they don't put the comma before the word and. And the grammar is one of those things that's not 100% everyone agrees on.
Well, I wish somebody would have explained that to my English teacher in junior high school.
Yeah, me too.
So your latest book is called How Stress and Anxiety Impact Your Decision Making. Let's just go with that question. How do stress and anxiety impact your decision making?
Well, I'm sure you and I and everyone else watching this broadcast has at one point said to themselves, I was so mad I couldn't think straight. And that's exactly what stress and
Ah,
anxiety does to you. The amygdala, the back part of your brain takes over. You get emotionally hijacked. When you get in that situation, your brain wants to limit your choices to two, what we call binary decision making. And usually, if it's an important decision or a long-term decision, you want to look for options. You want to look for 3, 4, 5 different things to think about. But the brain won't go in that mode unless you pause. You have to consciously pause, take a deep breath sometimes just go outside and get some fresh air, and then focus on the problem or the situation, or in my case, maybe the creative idea about a book I'm writing. And then you'll make better decisions.
okay, I've heard this similar theory reference to personal relationships, people, i.e., husband, wife, spouses, boyfriend, girlfriends, where they get into an argument, and the more intense and the more emotional the argument gets, the less your ability to think rationally uh, becomes, right?
Absolutely, absolutely,
And
and same thing in the workplace. Quite honestly, you get mad at a coworker, but yeah, anytime you let those emotions take over, you'll make bad mistakes. By the way, it's not always negative emotions either. When you get too positive, you get elated. I mean, I grew up in Las Vegas. I believe you live outside Las Vegas. This is how
yeah,
casinos grow. You get on a hot streak, and a smart person, you win a couple $1,000s at the blackjack table, you should walk away. But no, I'm on a winning streak. I'm hot. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna make it 4,000. I'm gonna make it 5,000, and you end up gambling your $2,000 winnings away. So casinos don't mind if you win, because the average person is going to gamble it right back. If not right then, a few minutes later, an hour later, at a different table. That's human nature. So
oh
over
yeah.
being too happy can also lead us to make bad decisions.
When I first moved here, I won 16 grand on a slot machine.
Wow.
Almost like the second day that I had moved, I just went down, you know, and I thought, oh, wow, this is great. And then, of course, over the years, I've given them back the entire 16,000 plus, and
Yeah.
now I just don't bother going at all.
No, I mean, and you know what's interesting is, I like I said, I grew up in Las Vegas up through college, and I know most residents who live in Vegas, particularly long-term residents who aren't associated with the casino, are not gamblers, and because
No,
we all know you lose money, so you let the tourists come in and gamble. You have a
right.
flutter every once in a while, as they say in Australia, but you don't gamble all the time.
No, and in fact, the only time I would go there is to eat, and now
Oh,
with COVID, I mean, the buffets are shut down, so there's just nothing.
I understand. That's how I put myself through college, $1.99 buffet at the Showboat Hotel.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were there during there's sort of two phases of Las Vegas, isn't there? There's the old Vegas and the new
Yep.
Vegas.
Yeah, I was part of the old Vegas,
You're part of
definitely.
the old Vegas.
I don't recognize the new Vegas, I have to admit.
Yeah, it's totally different than it was. I remember being here once in 1980, and it was still the old Vegas. And then when I came back in 2005, totally different place,
Mm,
completely
definitely.
different.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about leadership. You've also got another book called Leadership Lessons from the Volkswagen Saga.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about that. It's an interesting title.
Well, it's a great story. I mean, Volkswagen, let's see, it'd be about 7, 8 years now. They purposefully cheated the Clean Air Act. They purposely put a cheat device in their cars to fool the EPA emission tests. And so they got caught. And so far to date, it has cost Volkswagen 35 billion US dollars. At
Wow.
least 3 executives have been put in jail, all here in the United States. And right now, we're here in 2020. The former CEO is now finally being charged with some criminal offenses in Germany. So there's a lot of lessons. There's lessons about leadership. There's lessons about accountability. There's even lessons about branding. I've got a chapter in there about the branding lessons because the Volkswagen brand just obviously went downhill. I know a lot of people today would say, I will never buy a Volkswagen again. I mean, remember, they ran advertising in the United States about clean diesel. And they convinced everyone to change over, not everyone, but a lot of people, change over to diesel. It's clean fuel. It's clean energy. And it wasn't. It was actually putting out up to 40 times the amount of emissions that was allowed by law.
Amazing. How did they even create a cheat device? What did this
And
thing do?
well, what it did is, when you go in for your tests, and they put in some software in, because everything's computerized in a car now, right? So they put in some software, and when you go into a test, the front wheels obviously aren't running. They're only the back wheels are turning when you do the environmental test. Kind of like you go in for your smog tests, every couple of years, whatever
They
happens. So
stick the thing up the tailpipe of the car.
well,
Yeah,
they do that, but also in some cases they were, the other tests were they had to put the car on a little machine, and what they did is that the software did two things. It figured out that the front wheels were not moving, and the car was running at the exact same speed. Unlike in most, like driving, you stop and go. And so
right.
the software then kicked in so that the device ran at 100%. It would run efficiently, and it would pass the smog test. But what it would do when you're driving on the road, the cheat device would lower the emissions device so that you got better gas mileage. So you were getting good gas mileage, unknown that you're polluting the air in doing so.
Wow. Pretty inventive, though. Whoever thought of that?
It was German engineers, German ingenuity, I guess. But unfortunately, they cheated, and fortunately, they got caught around the world. And there's still court cases in Australia, I believe, in Canada. But like I said, a lot of leadership lessons, and they had a culture. The culture in Volkswagen at the time was you could never say you failed, and you could never tell your bosses no. So if your bosses told you go do something, you had to go do it. And in this case, interesting enough, the CEO of the company had told the engineers they couldn't afford a $350 device. They could have put a $350 device in the automobile and not had a cheat. But they were trying to reduce costs. They were trying to increase the profit margins. And he said, no, you got to figure a way to do it without that $350 investment per car. And so they figured it out by writing some software code, and actually it was written by a different company, installing in the cars, and that's what they did.
So to write that cheat code cost less than $350?
Per vehicle, and they were selling, here in America there were like 11 million cars that had the cheat device. So what's 11, $350 times 11 million? That's, I guess that's like $3.5 billion or something. So yeah, it was a lot cheaper to write the software code, because this went on for years. I think it affected 6, maybe 7 years of automobiles. So it wasn't just one car, and it was over multiple vehicles. It was over their Audi products, some of their Porsche products as well as the
Ah,
Volkswagen cars.
okay. So aside from an author, do you also do public speaking?
I don't do much public speaking here in the U.S. I did a lot of it in Asia when I lived in Asia, but up to a year ago, I was doing classroom training, leadership training, or actually up to February this year, but obviously that's all gone away. But I also do a lot of virtual leadership training, um, virtual modules, like 90-minute sessions with people. And then I do a lot of individual leadership coaching, again, all virtual in today's, lockdown world.
Okay. Um, what is the one quality that defines a leader, if there is just one?
I think integrity would be the number one. Integrity and trust. A great leader. I mean, and again, you look at the Volkswagen people. They were leaders, but they weren't what I would call great leaders. They did not have integrity. I think the number one thing would be integrity, building trust. I define great leaders as people who both manage for results, or I should say lead for results, and who lead people, and who also lead people development and lead their own development. So good managers, and there's a lot of good managers out there, good managers typically focus on one or two. They either lead for results, and they don't care about their people as much, or they're very people managers. They're very empathetic, very well working with their people. Everyone likes working for them, but they don't always get the results that you want. They don't always achieve the desired results. A great leader can do both.
A great leader can do both. Give me an example of somebody that can do both. Do you know a name off the top of your head?
I think one of the best examples I personally like is Howard Schultz when he was at Starbucks. And I mean, I love the fact that he told Wall Street one time in a meeting with the analysts, and he said, "Look, if you're investing in my stock because you want me to focus on shareholder returns, then do not invest my stock. My number one priority are my employees. My number two priority are my customers, and my number three priority are my shareholders." And in today's world, everyone does the opposite. Their shareholders are number one. They all worry about shareholder value, about dividends, about getting a stock price increase. And he basically said, "Don't invest in my company if you expect me to make you my number one priority." I think he was a great leader, and for that reason. And I think that's why he was very successful in building Starbucks up the way he did.
What about Lee Iacocca?
Lee Iacocca comes from the old school, the old command and control school. Do it my way or the highway. Do it what we used to say back then. Do it the I way, the Iacocca way, or the highway.
Yeah.
I don't think that works in today's world. Quite. It probably still works in the military to an extent. Although I have talked to some ex-military people recently, and they said that that's actually being toned down in the military, at least here in the United States. I think we have people now. We hire people for their brains. Back in Ike Iacocca's days, back in Henry Ford days, we hired people for their hands. They were workers. Work with your
Right.
hands, do things. Now we hire people for the brains, and you can't tell somebody who has a brain, go do it my way. Or they're gonna revolt, or they're going to do it reluctantly if they have to until they find another job. So, today's world, a good leader or a great leader always starts with the word why. Why are we doing this? Explains it to people, explains the rationale behind it. And a great leader also knows there's a difference between a clarification question from an employee and a pushback question. So a pushback question would be like, why are we doing this? That tone of voice. You use the same words to clarify, go, so I understand, why are we doing this? Or what's the rationale behind why we're doing this? And that's a clarification question. And a great leader will act on that clarification question, help people understand why we're doing the new changes, the new initiative, rather than saying, don't ask questions, just we've made a decision, go do it, go implement it.
Yeah. Okay. I get that because I think the days of the assembly line are really being taken over more by robots and automation, right?
Yeah, and so leadership styles have to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you see that happening in many cases.
Okay. Stephen, we do have to wrap this up. Your book is called, where is it?
How
How,
stress and anxiety impact your decision making. And I wrote it just for these pandemic times, because everyone's under higher stress, higher anxiety, and there's got a lot of tips in there about how to manage stress, how to some mindfulness techniques as well in there, some purposeful breathing techniques, all about controlling your anxiety, controlling your stress, so that you can operate both personally and professionally. This is both it's for everybody, not just leaders. So, how
okay.
stress and anxiety impacts your decision making.
Do you have a website you want to give out?
I do. It's calianteleadership.com. You probably know caliente in Spanish means hot, but the second definition is it means passionate. And I'm very passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about leadership development. So it's calianteleadership.com.
Super. Thank you so much for